Some of the 7 Days to Die community has had a bit of a problem with how water works ever since Alpha 21 removed the empty jars and added the dew collector. The reported issues are largely that empty jars no longer existing just kind of doesn't make sense, since we had them for years and I don't think anyone ever actually complained particularly about them. Nonetheless, the developers felt a need to remove them, and we recently got a post on Reddit from Joel going over precisely his thought process behind this. Quote, "We took out jars because there was never any survival element to them. You could scoop up some sand, craft 5,000 jars, and never have any struggle with water again. There was never a decision to craft this new shiny thing or have water to drink. It was so easy to have endless water that it shouldn't have even existed. Nobody ever spent a nickel on water, etc. We brought them back. There would have to be some kind of balance, like you can't craft them. Dying or falling has a chance to break jars in inventory. Maybe even restrictions on filling them, or murky water can only make distilled water that isn't safe to drink. You'd probably have to load the dew collector with jars as well. Is it the realism you liked, or that it was easy?" And there were like 1,200 replies to that, voicing all kinds of reasons that people like jars or weren't bothered by the removal. Here's my response and what I would have done instead of just removing jars and adding the dew collector. In my opinion, the first mistake was removing jars, which is pretty obvious. We saw Joel's reasoning for removing jars, and I wouldn't say the reasoning is wrong, I would just say that the idea to then remove jars as if the jars were the cause of that problem is a shortcut. The devs presented us with a world where water was drinkable, and it just needed to be boiled, and they gave us lakes and rivers. They just needed jars to collect the water. And that was the case for like 8 years of this game's development. And then they tried to take the jars back and then gave us no good in-game reason for this. As it stands in 7 Days to Die, the reason my character cannot fill up a cup or a bottle or any other container and fill it up at the nearest river is literally just because he's stupid. We have a situation where this water isn't hazardous. I can stand next to it with a jar of water, then when I drink the water, the jar simply vanishes and my character can't use it to collect more water. My character can't figure out a way to take the cooking pot off this campfire and fill it with water to boil it. I can fill a bucket with water and I can throw it on the ground, but I can't throw it into a cooking pot to boil it. The only reason for this in-universe is that my character is a profound simpleton. Actual slack-jawed, mouth-breathing crayon eater. It's literally the only reason. He was using ChatGPT for everything before the apocalypse, and he forgot how to use his brain. This is a problem not because it's not realistic or not because it's not easy, but because it's fucking stupid. The problem of water being too easily obtained should have never been solved simply by Thanos snapping a single item and then acting like we were all stupid for noticing that. Problem should have been solved creatively and intelligently. The problem of water's lack of difficulty does not lie in my character being intelligent enough to fill a cup with water, but rather the fact that there's no reason for the water to be the problem. If you check that same Reddit post I mentioned, you'll see one comment from Joel that stuck out to me in particular, which was, "Water survival was non-existent. In every apocalypse movie, drinkable water is highly valuable, not something in abundance that is no big deal." Yes, in post-nuclear survival movies, sure, water is hard to obtain, and in other apocalyptic scenarios, and while you have been slowly trying to make this game into Fallout with an emphasis on being a post-nuclear zombie apocalypse, you haven't actually made the water dangerous. It's not irradiated, it's not infected, it's not poisoned, it's not filled with deadly fish, it's not contaminated with heavy metals as far as we can tell, it's just water. There's no inherent reason for the water in the rivers and lakes of Arizona to be completely undrinkable. It would just need to be filtered and boiled to be safe. And indeed, there's no reason for my character to not be able to pick up a jar and fill it. So we have to make the water in Arizona inherently undrinkable. This would be done by making it a hazard. Now there's a lot of options here. You could make it infected, or you could make it irradiated, which would make it hard to purify the water. You can add as many containers to the game as you want, and we still wouldn't be able to get water easily because infected or irradiated water is a difficult problem to solve, and you can give me 100,000 jars and I still can't safely drink this water. That is why in apocalypse movies and games, water is difficult to obtain, because there's something wrong with the water, not something wrong with the brain of the character. So I'm sure most of you are seeing the simple solution to the water problem in 7 Days to Die, but let's go over the specifics of how I'd implement it, because it's always fun to talk about shit like that. So First, the hazard. There are all sorts of reasons that simply boiling a water source might not make it clean to drink. Boiling water kills bacteria, but it doesn't eliminate every kind of contaminant. And indeed, the most logical one for a game that is being morphed into a post-nuclear survival game is radiation. The one issue I have with radiation is that, of course, not only would drinking that water be a problem, it would be a problem to get in the water. And that might be annoying for new players if their screen goes green and they start keeling over instantly, because this game doesn't put its post-nuclear foot forward. It kind of lulls you into this is a normal zombie apocalypse with the, green environment and stuff. But that is a marketing problem in my opinion, not a game problem. It's very explicitly post-nuclear, and I think you could definitely tone down the radiation damage in the water compared to the map borders or the mutated zombie. I think that the Fun Pimp's other proposed solutions of making jars break on death or making them non-craftable is the Fun Pimp's getting tunnel vision on the wrong problem. It's just a water container. It really cannot be the enemy here. So my solution is irradiated water. You get in the water, you take some small damage, except maybe in the wasteland where it just boils you really quickly. I don't know how that would be implemented necessarily into the game, but I'm sure it's somehow possible. But the rest of the things I'm going to talk about, I actually do know you can implement into the game quite easily as a mod. So you drink directly from this water or you drink murky water, you take a lot of damage. Let's just call it 10 off the bat here, and then you can boil that water into boiled water, and it only does like 5 damage because you've gotten rid of all the other contaminants that may be in the water but not the radiation. If you take the boiled water and then maybe you could add a water filter item or reuse one of the existing items in that vein that's already in the game, you could have filtered boiled water, and this would only do like 2.5 damage because you filtered out some of the bigger pieces of heavy metals like uranium in the water. But you're still going to have to use meds to recover from that, and indeed 2.5 damage per drink is going to stack up over time. And indeed a fun option as well to make it more hardcore for people who want that would be to add a radiation poisoning mechanic that you could maybe enable or disable from the main menu, which makes you seek out radiation treatment drugs, and it would gradually go up from 0 to 100%, eventually killing you in a very similar way to how the infection mechanic works, but instead it only raises when you drink irradiated water. But the thing is that it should be slow. It should be like 0.1% per drink, because you do have to consume a lot of water in 7 Days to Die. Your character is a very thirsty boy. If you had it like 1% per drink, you would be dead by the end of the first week if you never found any meds. And while that's maybe realistic, I don't think it's interesting. I think it would be really, really brutal for newer players. So making it forgiving would be a better option, I think, and it still gives you something to worry about. Indeed, again, another menu option could be added to increase the severity of radiation poisoning so that drinks are 10 times as irradiating, and so you will die in a few days if you keep drinking this impure water. Then what I would do is have a new crafting station called the water purification system that takes your murky water jars and crafts them into purified water. The station should be locked behind an endgame chemical loot item, ideally one that is uncraftable or buyable, but is guaranteed to spawn in one of the 3 tier 5 chemical related POIs: Higashi Pharmaceuticals, Poppin' Pills Factory, or the Karen Higashi Residence. Perhaps have it spawn in a little unique shipping crate guaranteed to be in the end loot of these 3 POIs. And yes, if you were wondering, 7 Days to Die does occasionally have guaranteed loot like this. It is very much a thing you can do in the game. For example, the supercorn seeds in the supercorn farm POI are always guaranteed. This item could be a little pile of water purifier components, something that's far too complex for your character to machine on their workbench, and these could only be found in these POIs, or you could have it be so that it's only found in these 3 POIs guaranteed, but there's a rare chance for it to spawn in other chemical loots later on in the game, just in case someone generates a map that magically doesn't have these 3 POIs. They still have an option. There's always a chance to get at least one. But for the most part, if you want to guarantee yourself one of these water components, you're going to have to be very well equipped in order to make the water purifier, and therefore only near the end of the game will the player fully achieve water security, which they eventually should. That should be part of a survival game, is achieving security for all of the major needs of a person. That's part of the loop of a survival game in my opinion, and players should be rewarded for actually playing the game and engaging with its systems and going into high level POIs like that. If you want to take it even further, you could make it so that the water purification station requires electricity to function, therefore putting yet another mid to late game barrier between absolute water security and the player. Now, water would always be a problem at the beginning of the game, a constant worry where you have to think about, do you want to use your meds to heal hits from zombies, or are you going to have to waste some of them drinking this water and healing yourself from the radiation damage? Every bottle of actual purified water you would find in loot and at the trader would feel like a really useful loot item to have found, and the fight to get geared up well enough to be able to take on tier 5 POIs where those special crafting items are found would be a satisfying thing to do in the game. It's a real true end game goal, achieving water security through playing the game. Now, another consideration is of course the do collector. I think we should keep it. I don't subscribe to the Fun Pimp's ideology of removing shit for no reason. I would make a minor change, and the water filter mod, rather than making boiled water like in vanilla, should probably make the filtered water that I mentioned earlier, and then I'd have a second recipe available at the water purifier that takes filtered water and turns into fully purified water but does it faster. Rather than taking a minute to turn murky into pure, it would maybe take like 10 seconds to turn filtered into pure. Therefore, you still have a reason to use the do collector to supplement your water supplies throughout the game, because it can be used to get your purified water faster than going all the way to the river and then spending a minute per item to craft. And of course, the do collector would still provide a niche of providing water in locations far away from water sources, if you want to make a base up a mountain, for example. Now, as for how all this would affect cooking, obviously the hard option, which would be harder to create and would be harder to play with, especially for new players who might get confused by all the different duplicate recipes, is to have radiated versions of food and drinks and clean versions of food and drinks. But the easier one might just be making it so that all these food and drinks just require purified water to make properly. If they require water at all, of course. A grilled meat doesn't need water. Therefore, you can actually use this as a dual purpose way to make food survival harder to do by requiring clean water to make the food, and make that purified water item even more valuable, therefore giving you even more incentive to do all this. Another consideration is of course going to be glue balancing. Do you want to make it craftable with basic water? Do you need to make it have filtered or pure water? My thinking is you could maybe have something like basic water be used to craft expensive, inefficient glue at a campfire, and pure water can be used to batch craft glue with even less bones and supercorn at a chemistry station. So yeah, that is an extensive but not tremendously difficult to implement solution to the water problem. It would really be 90% minor XML edits and the creation of like 2 3D models, which for the Fun Pimps would be extremely easy, I have to imagine. Maybe for modders that would be a lot harder, but I would add jars back, I'd add radiated water, radiation poisoning, add damage to drinking non-purified water, and then add a fun challenge to find special items to craft a couple of late game crafting stations that give you all the water you could possibly want if you're capable of crafting it. It all makes sense, it's believable without being painfully realistic, and it could certainly never be accused of simply being easy, but it is still simple and intuitive. Let me know what you think of this idea to rework the water in 7 Days to Die, and let me know if you want to see a similar video on how I'd rework crafting progression in 7 Days to Die, which is my other big gripe with the state of this game. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.